about the role of the online community manager. With us on this call is Correy Burres, Nicole Williams, and Rachel Kopec. If you want to introduce yourself real quick and tell us a little bit about what you do in your job, we'll get started.
I am Correy Burres at the Freedom Foundation out in Olympia, Washington, and essentially what I do is I'm the director of production, so I oversee all of our marketing and all of the messaging that we do. We do a lot of video and online media. We've been experimenting with a lot of new things lately, so I'm going to talk about that as best I can.
I'm Nicole Williams. I'm the president of Spark Freedom, and I'm here to take your questions. If you have any questions today, you can put them on our Google page or send us a tweet at Spark Freedom.
There, I'm Rachel Kopec, and I'm the Coalitions Coordinator for the State Policy Network, working with a lot of the state think tanks and national associate members of the State Policy Network. There are 60 state think tanks and about 90 national partners. So I manage our Facebook page and Twitter followers, and also do face-to-face outreach. So I'll be bringing in kind of the on-the-ground community managing aspect.
Okay, great. So, Correy and Rachel, in your opinion, how would you describe the role of a community manager for a nonprofit?
Well, for us, what a community manager is, obviously they deal a lot with social platforms and kind of making sure that we are active. And really, the idea of community is the key word there, is they try to create a community through social mediums, and they also try to cultivate that community and keep them engaged and involved. So there's different ways that we do that, but the key thing is they consistently are pushing out our information, but they're also consistently conversing with the community and trying to grow that as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, I think it's really engaging your audience, so having a kind of keen intuition on who the folks you want to be engaged into what your mission is and what your goal is, and bringing in, just like you would on the ground community organizing, making sure folks know how they can take action, how they can engage with other members of the community.
Okay, great. So have either of you had any recent success using social media within your role as a community manager?
Well, I'm actually not our community manager. I actually, we have a full-time community manager that works for our organization, and he handles, it's Lasse Lund. He wasn't able to be on this call because he's having a kid. So, good excuse, we'll let it go this time. But what's kind of interesting is we actually experimented with having a community manager and kind of having somebody spend a little bit of time or trying to teach our other people within our organization to handle those aspects of what we do. And one of the key things that we got out of it is you really do need someone that's really committing a certain amount of time. It doesn't always have to be full-time, but you really have to commit a certain amount of time and saying, you know what, I'm going to put this amount of hours into tracking what we're doing, looking at what our people are talking about, kind of engaging with our audiences. So, you know, we've seen a lot of success over the last year just by committing one person to kind of taking care of and managing our community and really focusing in on that aspect. I think for us, we've seen growth in not only our impact, but, you know, a lot of what we do, people don't naturally see. You know, it's not really the most engaging content sometimes. So what we've realized is we really have to be the type of people that kind of slam it in front of people's faces and go, here, look at this, look at this, look at this. And that's really what social media is about. It's about creating content and putting it in front of as many faces as many times as you can in different ways. And so we've seen a lot of success and growth in that element, or in that aspect, but also in engagement. We've seen, like, our engagement has, like, probably, I don't want to say quadrupled, but it's probably more than that. It's probably 10 times the amount of engagement that we had a year ago the same time, just by committing somebody to doing it and cultivating that audience.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Correy, of having somebody really committed to doing that. And I think Freedom Foundation, you all do such a good job and have created such a solid community, both on the ground and with your folks online. For us at State Policy Network, it's our audience is a little bit different. Our folks are actually state think tankers and policy wonks and folks who work in the nonprofit sphere. So the community that we're trying to connect is folks who already kind of have an idea of each other, but we really want to get them kind of connected to the broader network. So we've used a lot of Tweetups as a means of doing that. So a lot of times, so part of our audience are the policy wonks. A lot of them are great on Twitter, but a lot of folks aren't as experienced or have a harder time getting there. So by bringing people together and they feel like, oh, I can answer real policy questions and talk to, you know, somebody, have a conversation with somebody from the Goldwater Institute or from Mackinac via this channel. I think knowing, you know, what incentivizes people to invest in their community is a really key component.
I think that's a great thing that you have Tweetups. That was one of the questions I was going to ask about. Do you have more success with virtual Tweetups where you're using a hashtag, or are you actually going out and doing it in person and say, everybody come here, let's all have drinks and kind of hang out?
Yeah, what I absolutely love the physical Tweetup because otherwise people get busy, I think, and it's a lot more fun when you see somebody face to face. But you know, if you're in different locations, that's often difficult. But it's a lot of fun. It really ties people together, I think, to use the model of doing something physical. So what we've done before is we broadcast what experts are going to be on Twitter to answer questions, and we'll put out kind of trivia questions as a part of the Tweetup. So Tweetup will be on a set topic using a set hashtag that everybody on Twitter uses, and we'll have set experts tweeting. But then we also will host an event. So we hosted a happy hour at our office and invited National Coalition partners and folks who were tweeting kind of live, and we streamed a wall of the tweets in our office, so people were able to see kind of live action what was going on and who there were little fights that broke out and debates that happened. So it made it a lot more fun, and people were more apt to get really invested in it, and then also, you know, got exposed to members of the community that they didn't know before.
Okay, great. How about you, Corey?
Well, I actually think Rachel made a really good point. Like, I think a lot of people think social media is a antisocial in a lot of ways way of conversing with people. I think that, to me, it's an extension of relationship, right? To me, it's an extension of a relationship that's already kind of out there, and so you really want to take advantage of that as much as possible. I think like getting together in a personal, more physical format is always a good extension of what social media does. But social media is a way to keep them connected in between those times, because let's be honest, we're all very busy. We all have a lot going on. It's really hard to get people there. And we've found that we can stay connected with people that, you know, Washington's a fairly big state. There's a lot of areas that nobody wants to drive to. You have to drive essentially over the mountains and through the desert to get to them. And so it's easy for us to stay connected to those people and for them to stay connected to what we're doing, and then we also extend that out. If we know we have an audience in a more desolate area, we're willing to drive out to that area if we know that when we do meet up with them, there's going to be 20 or 30 of them show up because we've created that relationship with them online.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your question at all, but so.
Yeah, that's good. So how many times do you think it takes until an in-person Tweetup is actually a success? I know the first time I had a Tweetup with a different organization, we maybe had 3 or 4 people show up, and then the next time we had 10, and then the fourth time there were 75 people there. Are you seeing the same type of things?
Yeah, in our Tweetups, it is very much based on building relationships, just in any community organizing, right? It's kind of a snowball effect. So you get 1 or 2 really committed people, and then they invite 3 people, and then they invite 3 people. So it's very much, once you get a couple invested people and they realize, you know, your mission's really important or the topic that you're talking about is really important, I think they're more apt to kind of invite other people and become brand ambassadors and engage people into your physical activities and events that you're hosting. So I think you're totally right. You got to start small with a couple of people who are very invested, and then hopefully if you are producing a good product and something that people are interested in, then you'll get people to show up.
I also think it's about building value, because I think a lot of people don't see the value in things like Tweetups. They think it's just a whole bunch of people kind of just, oh, they just want to play around on the internet, when what's really happening is they don't recognize value, but they see maybe a smaller thing happen and they're like, oh, well, that was actually kind of interesting when they, and that's I think how that momentum also builds, is you kind of get past that, those what people have defined as social media and all of those things. You can get past those quickly by kind of showing people how it brings value to their life in a lot of ways.
Okay. That was going to be one of my next questions, is how do you convince upper management at a nonprofit or a think tank that the role of a community manager is important? Because, you know, we're used to maybe outreach and fundraising where people are visiting older donors who give more money, but now we're looking at, hey, there's value in people that we're talking to online. What is kind of your pitch for them?
Well, we actually started social media quite a few years ago, and probably before a lot of other think tanks had even thought about it. And part of the reason I kind of was pushing for it was because you want to be on the front end of a good idea, not the back end of a good idea, because things switch so quickly. You know, who knows? I mean, MySpace was the big thing, however many years ago, right? And we jumped onto Facebook pretty quickly as well, and that actually gave us a lot of momentum to be able to kind of build off of that. We were on Twitter a lot before a lot of other people. Now, I'm not saying we did everything great, but I think being on the front end of those ideas also is good for your donors. It's good for people that believe in what you do, because they want to know that you're experimenting and you're trying new things. And I think that you're starting to see a lot of CEOs in leadership within think tanks. I think you're starting to see a lot of major donors kind of look at social media, and they're starting to recognize that it's a big deal, right? I mean, they see the numbers that Facebook puts up in terms of the amount of people that are impacted by it. They're starting to see online, and they see how many people have cell phones, you know, at what age people start adopting cell phones and using online media. And I think that you aren't always going to get everybody excited about that stuff, but you can get people excited by starting to kind of showing them the numbers and showing how it's impacting and how many people are using it.
Mm-hmm. There are two things I think to kind of drive the point home, and maybe this is because I really enjoy history, but I think history shows that whoever had the best handle on the communications technology of the time won. So I think you look back at FDR, and he had complete prowess on the radio, which was emerging technology at the time, right? The fireside chats of that era were what spread the messages, what got the New Deal, what the American people were bought into World War II. And he carried the communications of the day. He's an excellent communicator, but he knew how to use the medium. Fast forward to the Nixon-Kennedy debates, and Nixon did not know how to present himself on TV, which was the emerging media of the time. And so he lost, whereas Kennedy, he knew how to make up, he knew how to present himself well. Kennedy knew how to present himself on television, which was brand new at the time. You know, they'd never done these debates that way before. And he was an excellent communicator as well. So I think just looking, and if we look at what the competitive market, so the for-profit market, you want to benchmark on that and say, look at all of these companies. I mean, they care about their bottom line so much, and they're on these mediums and investing a lot of money in community managers. And bring a couple of case studies from what the for-profit world does. I think it makes a pretty compelling case that if you don't have an excellent online community built up, then you're probably going to be behind the times and probably lose.
Yeah, I actually think it's interesting you mentioned those two examples because that is almost those are the same two examples I kept bringing to people early on in our movement into social media because everybody knows how impactful, FDR and his fireside chats were. And he really did revolutionize how presidents use radio. And I use that a lot in terms of kind of explaining to people that early adoption is a good thing because it gains momentum. So.
Right. Just a reminder, if anyone has any questions, you can ask in the forums or you can tweet us at Spark Freedom. We'd love to hear from you. I think, Rachel, I wanted to go back to one of the points that you were making, which you're on fire. So those are some really great examples. Correy or Rachel, what do you think has been your individual biggest success so far?
Rachel, you can go first because I'm still thinking. I apologize.
Let's see here. As far as work with State Policy Network, kind of hate to go back to the whole tweet up, but I thought our Constitution Day tweet up was one of our greatest successes because a big goal of our overall social media strategy is to make all parts of the state policy, the network, feel a part of the network, right? So that's the 90+ national partners plus grassroots partners plus the state think tank network, which is 800+ people. How do we connect everyone and make them feel like they know each other? And so I thought the Constitution Day tweet up, a lot of times it's difficult to bring in national partners and make them feel a part of the state network because they have, everybody's working on their own kind of agenda and priorities. But Constitution Day is something we all obviously care very much about the Constitution, so it was something that could bring everybody across the lines together. And in the DC office of SPN, we had everybody physically there tweeting, so that connected the national partners in on this. And then we had the state experts. We had, I think, 30+ think tanks tweeting, having their constitutional scholars or policy analysts tweeting and answering questions, and it was really neat to see that dialogue and have such a wide spreading participation.
I'm going to do two. I'm sorry. So I couldn't decide which one to do. One of them is a little more personal. We did a video series called Talk Back on Jobs. And what we did for that video series is we really wanted to kind of break down basic understanding of free market and free enterprise principles. And so one of the things that we decided ahead of time with the help of Lassa Lund, who heads up all of our social media outreach, is we joined together with other groups that tend to put out a lot of videos. And we decided that we were going to be we're going to make the videos for Facebook, so they were going to be shorter videos than what we'd ever done before. And we were going to put a lot of pictures and very quick information out for people so that we could kind of drive traffic to those things. And so what we did is we actually planned out ahead of time what day we were coming out. We sent the videos to the people ahead of time and said, we're going to post this on YouTube, and this will be the link when we post it on YouTube. The day that it comes out, please post it on your website. And it actually drove up a lot of our traffic on YouTube. We have a lot of comments. A lot of them are very negative comments, which I think is actually kind of good because it's engaging another side of the audience, which was what we were trying to do, was expand who we talk to. And we got a lot of hits on the videos, but we also got a lot of hits on our website and a lot of likes out of it, which we hadn't seen before. Another thing we did is we sued our governor in our state, and we wanted to do a quick turnaround in terms of donations for that, and we decided to have a really strong social media platform to kind of drive that. So we had, your regular traditional media. We were on the radio. We talked to a lot of different radio stations, and we planned a 24-hour turnaround time, and we had an icon that they could put on their Facebook page if they gave money. We had ways for them to tweet about how much they gave, if they gave, those types of things, and it really engaged and expand our audience because we also followed that up with what we were doing on the radio. We would say, hey, go to Twitter and put this hashtag in, tell us that you gave us $5 to help stop Gregoire, who's our governor, and we had a lot of people kind of follow through with that side of things. Okay.
Can you walk us through a little bit about the language that you use? Is it more action-oriented? Is it kind of like telling people to take a specific action for what you want them to do?
Yeah, we tend to define what we want them to do ahead of time. I mean, that's one of the hard things to do is, and I'll give you an example of, I don't want to call it a failure, but an area where we probably could have done a little better. We would put out an informed voter guide to all of our people, and we weren't sure what we wanted them to do, so it was hard for us to track whether or not they did the right thing with that. You know, obviously we wanted it to impact how they look at their ballot and some of those things, but we also wanted them to we wanted them to go to the website because we were going to use that as our tracking of how impactful we were. Well, we didn't do a very good job of making that really clear, and I think that's the one thing. It's not so much what you have them do, it's that you make it really, really clear of what they need to do and make it one thing that they need to do. Don't make it like, oh, we want you to do this, and then we want you to go over here and do this, and then we want you to go over here and do this. You want to give them one thing that they need to do, so that way you're getting back feedback on how impactful it was in the first place.
Okay. So, Rachel or Corey, have you seen any examples of what other groups are doing really well?
Yeah, there's an index that came out of ranking state policy groups and which ones have done really well, and the Illinois Policy Institute got a very high score, and they were ranked #1. Freedom Foundation was close to really good stuff, but Illinois, something I think that they do really well is they also kind of highlight the personalities of their organization. So as a community kind of facilitating role, I think it's great that they will, kind of introduce their president and have videos of him speaking, and then their policy analyst or their executive vice president, Christina Rasmussen, she will go on and she will comment on things. So you really get to know, okay, who are these people that are out there working and the freedom fighters of the Illinois Policy Institute. So on a personal level, you see their faces, you see them respond to, if somebody says, I don't know about your school choice reform, then, Christina will get on there and respond, or someone from their organization, not just their social media manager. Yeah,
I know we want to move on, but along that same line, I think one thing they do uniquely well is they converge mediums. So when they're on the radio or when they're on television, they're talking about their social media and how to interact in a more social way. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of groups can do a little bit better is your policy person who might be on the radio, or your CEO, or whoever it is that might be on the radio or on the news, they really need to remember to push the social media aspect, because people are already there. It's something they already are engaged with, so you might as well remind them that you are there with them.
Nicole, do you have any examples that you would like to add?
Well, actually, what I have is a question from Twitter.
Okay.
Jason wants to know, how do you set specific goals of engagement? Do you do it with, case by case, or how do you do that for your whole program?
Well, I think that's kind of what I was talking about before is that's why you have to create one action item that you want them to do and make it really clear what it is, because then it's trackable. If you have too many goals, if you have too many things that you want them to do, we would like them to like us on Facebook, we want them to follow us on Twitter, and we want to have them go to our website and watch a video. If you do too much, especially for one specific campaign or goal, then I don't think you're going to have you're not going to be able to track it, and you're going to be really underwhelmed probably by the numbers. So being really clear, like, go and watch this video. That's all we want you to do. Go and watch this video. Then we can track how many numbers we were able to drive to that video.
Okay. Corey, kind of going back to one of the points you made earlier, I was watching Freedom Foundation video from the other night about a bigger piece of the pie. And what really got to me was the comments in the section below, which were getting pretty hot. How do you, I know that's not a crisis, but how do you handle comments like that? Or I guess the other question would be, how do you handle crisis management as a community manager?
Yeah, I think that's one of the tougher things to do in terms of, you don't want to come off as a jerk, I guess, in social media. Last, our social media person gave me a great book called Likeable Social Media, and it is a great. He talks about kind of creating a persona online where you're not always going back and saying, well, you're wrong because this, and that's kind of the especially when you're dealing with politics, that tends to be the way that we want to handle things. And people that comment on Facebook pages are usually, or Facebook or social media, it's kind of, we have this, there's a lot more vitriol because we tend to not, there's not really a face behind it, or we don't really have that personal contact. I bet you if you met those people face to face, they probably wouldn't talk to you the way they talk to you on YouTube comments. So you don't want to join in on that kind of like bashing the other person. What you want to do is kind of walk them through a process. And I think, especially since what we do is we try to educate people on free enterprise, we want to take that kind of teacher approach. Oh, well, I see what you're saying, and acknowledge what they're saying, and don't just dismiss it as crazy, thoughts. So I think that if you can kind of approach it from a likable way, try to be as nice about it as possible, acknowledge what they're doing, and then say, well, what about this point of view? And this is kind of our take on it, and this is what we tend to understand things at. That said, we have had, I called a person that was commenting on a lot of our stuff, our Freedom Foundation troll, because he literally would just go from page to page to page, and he would just waste hours of our time asking us questions that really weren't pertaining to the message at all. And I think at some point you have to just kind of end that conversation. It's not worth the conversation. It's not like you're going to turn him around. It's not really adding to your audience. I think if you want to have a debate, that's fine if it adds to your audience. But if it doesn't add to your audience, then you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Corey, I saw this really good example from the for-profit sector. It was Firehouse Subs. I don't know if they have those everywhere around the country, but Firehouse Subs has this really great community management strategy, and their crises tend to be like, oh, my sandwich sucked today, or I didn't get a pickle on it, or whatnot. And Firehouse Subs, they decided to have a really community service type of approach, or customer service approach. So when they got tweets or when they got Facebook posts, they would make sure that they responded genuine. So the funniest example and the best example they gave is somebody tweeted, Firehouse Subs, I did not get my favorite pickle with my sub. How disappointing. And they're afraid, oh no, our hundreds of followers saw this, we disappointed. So what their community manager did is she packaged up this whole pickle package and put like 20 pickles in there, pickle paraphernalia, and mailed it to her. And I thought, like, what a great example of, it could have been a crisis of, people saying, oh, Firehouse doesn't deliver, but turn it around to something fun and exciting and created like a brand ambassador for life out of this woman.
Okay, we have a question from David in Texas, and it is, how do you re-engage Facebook users who have gone dormant other than paid promotion?
Well, Chip, you might be able to speak a little better to this, but from what I understand in terms of the way that Facebook algorithms work and how to get back onto their wall and some of those things, I think you kind of have to figure out a way to. The question is, do you go in and actually directly message them? Essentially, the more they look at your stuff, the more your stuff is going to show up in their timeline. I know that for us, I know you said without doing paid promotions, one of the best things to do is to actually do promoted posts, because that shows up in their wall, it shows up in their timeline, and it doesn't look like you're giving them an ad on the side of the page. That's been one of the ways we've really been able to re-engage a lot of our audience that we kind of lost early on.
Yeah, I think my thing is you always have to have great content. There's a balance between, am I posting too many photos? Am I posting too much text? You always have to have great content, and you always have to feed the beast. I know that's not the best thing to call it, but it's really hard, especially if you have a fan that used to be what I call a brand ambassador, someone who you don't have to pay, but they are like your number one cheerleader, and then all of a sudden they just stop. Something's obviously happened, and I think that's a point where you need to step away from the page and reach out to that person directly and say, hey, you know, is everything okay? Is there anything we can do to help you? You know, we miss seeing your wonderful smiling face. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, another thing I think is kind of keeping up with what is trending, I guess, on content. So you're talking about having really good content, but also being very audience aware. And like, you know, recently I think we've all noticed that photo quotes are the thing. Like I could be, you know, have a disengaged audience, and all of a sudden I put a photo quote up and it takes off. And, you know, granted that does not reach your larger strategic goals, right, of just having a bunch of likes on a photo. But sometimes I think it draws people in who weren't there before, and it kind of pulls your ranking up as well. So I don't know, just keeping up on what people are really into at that moment, whether it's the Paul Ryan memes or.
Okay. One other question we have from somebody is, what should nonprofits or think tanks look for when hiring a community manager? So if you're the president or CEO, this type of thing might be new to you. In your professional opinion, what do you think they should be looking for when trying to hire someone?
Well, we just did, so I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, we hired Lassa, or moved Lassa into that role, and I think some of the things that we recognized with him was the fact that he was organized. I think that's always an important one. I'm not organized, so I probably wouldn't be a very good community manager. But I think that one of the more key things is, do they have a following by themselves? If you hire a community manager that has like 20 Facebook, you know, friends and, you know, 10 people that follow them on Twitter, they're probably not that impactful. So I think that you need to find somebody that already has a community that they manage. I think that you need to have somebody that has kind of a personality. I think, you know, we talked about Illinois and some of the things that they've done. If they're kind of a personality and nobody's really engaging with them, they're probably not going to make your content really the most interesting thing that they possibly can. And I also think it's got to be somebody, going back a little bit to that organized thing, somebody that can really understands how to read analytics and how to react to them. So following the numbers, oh, I see that this tends to happen when we do this, and being able to track that, and who's willing to try to experiment with new things and is able to relate the data to what they're actually working on.
Okay, well, we have one final question to wrap up on for each of the panelists. And, you know, we hear a lot about community engagement, and sometimes it gets a little fuzzy as we ask more questions. So if you were going to boil it down to the three things that people should do to start out with to start engaging their communities, what would those be?
Post, post, post. I think one of the biggest, I'm kind of joking in that, but like one of the big things that we don't do very well is we don't consistently put out content. Not all of it's going to hit. We've made really cool things and we put them on Facebook and then nobody sees them and we're like, oh, that stinks. That's awesome. Why didn't anybody see that? So I think that the more content you can continually put out, the better you're going to be able at engaging your audience, because you just don't know what you aren't always sure what they're going to engage with. That said, one of the things we learned out of our engagement, we used to post a lot of videos thinking that that was the key thing on Facebook. We actually found that doing a very quick picture had a much bigger impact for our time. So we've changed a lot of the way we do things. We actually promote our videos via pictures a lot of times. And so that's kind of what we've decided to do is we've experimented with different things, but we try to put out as much content as we possibly can.
My three are very people-focused. The first one I'd say is know your audience like the back of your hand. So know, do you have a really intellectual audience that loves, New York Times articles, or do you have a lot of, folks with busy lives that just want that picture snapshot, or is it a younger audience that likes a lot of more multimedia, like videos? So know what people like and solicit feedback off of it. Second, I would say have that attitude of customer service, of whether it's dealing with a crisis or whether it's how you respond to people, as Corey was kind of talking about, like having that likable personality. And I think just having a general kind of principle and mindset of customer service is so valuable. And thirdly, I would say introduce, and Corey hit on this also, introduce personality to your page. And if it's at all possible, I know every organization is so different, but getting your whole team on board with your social media strategy and bought in, so they're creating that active community environment, and you have your EVP, your social media person, your development person even posting on your Facebook page, and feeling like your community and your followers really know your organization, I think creates a really dynamic atmosphere.
Okay. I think my three are content, delivery, and execution. Content is king. You've got to have something good, and you've got to have something good to say. Delivery is another vital thing, whether it's a quote on Instagram, or it's a picture that you post on your Facebook wall. You need to find the right delivery method for everything that you're trying to share with people. Three is execution. You've got to have people who want to take ownership of your content. It's great to have a social media manager. It's great to have an online community manager, but your staff also has to be invested. They have to take ownership of it also. That's where it also comes in, execution-wise, to have brand ambassadors who love what you're doing so much they want to share it with the entire world. All right, I think that's it. I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you at our next live chat.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.